We take refuge until we're enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential we create by practicing the Dharma, may we soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May they be free from suffering and its causes. May they never be parted from the happiness beyond suffering. And may they abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment to the near, and aversion from the far. We shall cause this. Great compassionate Buddha, please inspire us to be able to do so. Reverently, we prostrate with our body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every types of offerings, actual and mentally transformed. We confess all of our negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in all of the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for all sentient beings. We dedicate the virtues of ourselves and others to the great enlightenment of all sentient beings. However innumerable all sentient beings are, we vow to save them all. However inexhaustible our delusions are, we vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, we vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, we vow to follow it completely. So now, with guitar. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, to the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One. Bodham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Gati, Gati. No need for applause or anything, okay? These are prayers with the guitar, with added. Okay, so this is the Enlightenment and the Teaching song, of which I will give a short commentary on after I finish. The darkness of ignorance had been dispelled, and the light of knowledge had risen. He had finally realized the truth and attained supreme enlightenment. He is the Buddha. said, listen, friends, I have found a way to overcome old age, sickness, and death. Let me teach you, and if you listen, learn, and practice as I tell you, very soon you will know for yourselves that what I say is true. All phenomena are dependent on conditions, cause and effect. Ignorance is the root of all evil, and the cause of all suffering. When it is replaced with wisdom, one realizes nirvana. Avoid all extremes, practice the middle path, the noble eightfold path, which consists of perfect understanding, perfect thought, perfect speech, perfect action, perfect livelihood, perfect effort, perfect mindfulness, perfect concentration. Do no evil, do only good, train your mind. The teaching of the Buddha is the path to enlightenment. And for the benefit of all, teach the Dharma, which is excellent in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. So hopefully the sound was okay and the guitar wasn't too loud or anything, because I haven't played for such a while. My sensitivity, maybe not. Thanks for the thumbs up there. Maybe not so gentle. That's what I noticed with it. It's like anything in life. If we don't practice it all the time, this is a segue, by the way. If we don't practice it consistently, then it gets a little bit awkward, you know. We're not really sensitive. We don't understand the subtleness of things, including our Dharma practice. You know, it's the same with the playing guitar. That's little subtle things, the subtle changes, what we call in guitar language, the hammer on and hammer off, and things like that of the different notes within the chords themselves. We're unable to do it really, you know. It's or they become too pronounced and take over and things like that. It's the same with our Dharma practice. If we're not consistent with our Dharma practice, then our other habits in our life will be more prevalent, and then therefore we probably go backwards a little bit and start to reinforce old habits, such as, you know, for instance, an obvious habit that we all have is to get frustrated and even angry. This once we get fully blown anger takes over our mind. Once that happens, it's very difficult to wind it back. And so with the Dharma practice, even though we're not free from these negative emotions yet, then actually, if with the Dharma practice, it helps us to stop this from getting fully blown. You know, stop it at what I say, nip it in the bud. Some of you may be aware of the article I wrote years ago about nipping negativity in the bud and creating what I call a buffer zone in between your experience, your personal experience of something, and then your mental reactions, your habitual tendency to react habitually to, especially negativities and things that you find pleasing. Even you may react with attachment. Okay, so I can actually pull my sleeves down now. I had them up. I don't know whether you could see that. I had my sleeves up because they get in the way. You know, the floppy robes, sleeves. So more appropriate, maybe I pull them down, pull them up again later. So anyway, that song, obviously the beginning of the song, the darkness of ignorance had been dispelled and the light of knowledge had arisen. He had finally realized the truth and attained supreme enlightenment. So that is, you know, the Buddha practiced for many, many lifetimes as a bodhisattva. And at that moment, the conditions that he'd created through so many lifetimes of practice, and all of the perfecting all of the paramitas and so forth. He had realized or reached that moment that all it took now was for him to meditate intensely at that time, make a little bit of effort and attain enlightenment during that evening. And then then of course, eventually after some time, he was able to have some students. The first students he had actually were two mendicants or two merchants, and he gave a teaching to them, very brief teaching. And then, of course, he found the first five, to become the first 5 monks. And there the Sangha was formed at that time, obviously. And he said, listen, friends, I have found a way to overcome all suffering, basically, old age, sickness, and death, and all of suffering, to end the cycle of existence, to end samsara. And if you listen, learn, and practice, as I tell you, very soon you will know for yourself that what I say is true. And this is very important, related to the Dharma, is that we can't just believe what, like, for instance, if you're reading Dharma books and commentaries from realized masters, or genuine teachers, you could actually be reading these books and then just believe them blindly. But don't do that. You have to check them for yourself. The checking could happen immediately. You could say, yeah, absolutely. Of course we have confidence, trust, and what we call faith in the Buddha and so forth. But we actually need to investigate for ourselves and analyze the teachings for ourselves before we firmly believe them. So don't believe blindly and don't disbelieve blindly. Have an open mind, and then utilize your intelligence in a good way to get to know the teachings for yourself. Get to know the purpose why you're practicing. Get to know the teachings or the methods that need to be put into practice to realize the goal of what we call nirvana or enlightenment, or even if it's just happiness, something like that. Then and then you have to get off your butt and put it into practice. So those 3 aspects are very important: the purpose of why we're doing it, the methods that need to be put into practice, how to put them into practice accurately, and then to implement them into your daily lives. To actually not just leave the meditation on the cushion, for instance. Then you have to take this off the cushion and into your daily lives. Okay, so that's that part of the song. Very brief, like I said, it's probably more of an overview rather than a commentary, really. So where's it up to in the song? You will know that what I say is true. All phenomena are dependent on conditions, cause, and effect. This is the law of karma. But you have to remember that the cause or causes, new causes, are dependent on previous effects. And of course, the effects come from these other causes as well as previous ones. They don't exist. Cause doesn't exist by itself. The effect doesn't exist by itself. Therefore, they are empty of independent nature. And therefore, we can break through the cycle. You can say as well, cause and effect, and condition, cause, condition, and effect. This is another way to express the 12 links of dependent origination, or paccita samutpada, or cyclic existence, or samsara. This is another way to actually get to know it. Okay, so the cause and the effect are empty of self-nature, and therefore, even though we experience them now because we are imperfect, we have the mental afflictions, we haven't purified the mind yet, and we haven't developed this immeasurable compassion yet. So we need to practice consistently now. But know that sometime we actually can achieve these goals, this goal of our practice, this goal of our purpose, you could say, and by putting the methods into practice accurately and consistently. Anyway, so all phenomena are dependent on conditions, cause, and effect. That's not only ourselves, because we are self-centered creatures. Even if you are compassionate too, loving, and that's fantastic. We need to improve on that. But we think of ourselves first so often. But this doesn't just relate to yourself. Okay, so, and the same with the 5 skandhas, the commentary I give today. We have to remember this is not just ourselves. This is actually all phenomena. All phenomena are interdependent. Okay, that's the doctrine on interdependent origination. And that includes the tiniest dust mote in the universe, to the largest physical body in the universe, to the biggest thoughts, to the tiniest thoughts, in other words, mental and physical phenomena, and other living beings as well, whether we know about them or not. And so on cause and effect, ignorance is the root of all evil and the cause of all suffering, because ignorance gives rise to tanha, which means attachment, which the Buddha says is a second noble truth, the attachment based on ignorance. And so the cause of suffering. And this is, it's the root of all negativities. It's the root of it. Evil is the word I use there. It's not my favorite word really, but actually it's the root cause of all of our defilement or all of our mental afflictions. Okay. And all of the suffering throughout the whole universe and beyond. Ignorance is the root cause of this. But when it's replaced with wisdom, we can realize enlightenment. Of course, with the full enlightenment, we're talking about wisdom and bodhicitta, or wisdom and the altruistic intention of great compassion for all living beings to attain enlightenment. So these have to be worked together. But right now, we have to purify our mind. And then as we purify our mind, we will become more compassionate. We will become more loving, And I think that will do for that. Otherwise, I'll spend too much time talking about that, okay, and not enough time on the subject that we are supposed to be talking about. And so then it says, avoid all extremes. So avoid the extremes of the belief in eternalism, belief in nihilism, two opposites. Nihilism basically means you don't even believe in cause and effect, in relative reality, and then, of course, eternalism relates to some sort of superior being running everything, and not yourself. In other words, you're not responsible for your happiness, you're not responsible for your suffering, and so forth. So these are extreme views. So the Buddha is saying to let go of these views and practice the middle path. So avoid all extremes, practice the middle path, the Noble Eightfold path. And of course, the Noble Eightfold path can also be known as the three higher trainings. The higher training in morality, the higher training in meditation, and the higher training in wisdom. So avoid all extremes, practice the middle path, Noble Eightfold path, which consists of right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right effort, right livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. And we can't go into that right now because that will take up the whole class if I give commentary on that, or maybe 12 classes even. Okay, so I think that's how long we took to go through the Eightfold Path about 1.5 years ago on Zoom. So we'll leave that there right now, and I'm sure that most of you understand it a lot already. Or even if you're new to Dharma, then you can start to look into it, start to read some commentaries and so forth, and ask teachers questions. Then avoid all evil. This relates to the practice of morality, obviously. And then do only good relates to the practice of meditation. And train your mind or purify your mind relates to the higher training in wisdom. And then teaching of the Buddha is the path to enlightenment. Know this for sure after you thoroughly check and analyze. And share the Dharma. So teach the Dharma. Whatever you learn, share it with others. You don't have to be like those old school preachers or whatever from some of the traditions, where you push it on people or anything, but just share it through your actions. Practice well enough so you train yourself and then show it through your actions. Or if you give formal teachings, do that. Or even some people that want to know about Buddhism, share what you know and what you think they can understand, what suits their character. It's excellent in the beginning when you start out on the Dharma path. It's excellent as you're practicing the Dharma path, and it's excellent in the end when you attain enlightenment. Beyond excellent, actually, because to us, we have a dualistic way of thinking, don't we? And we think excellent is the opposite of not excellent. But actually, it's para, it's beyond that. So beyond excellent. And so that is that song. And I don't think it took too long to explain. And obviously we're recording the class, so you guys can view the video another time, maybe even take some notes. And I extend the invitation. You can contact me anytime, through Facebook or Messenger, or we can exchange email addresses, etc., etc. And I'm very happy to answer questions, any queries whatsoever. And I'm sure that you also have teachers yourself that you maybe have a close affinity with, or maybe you have close contact with as well. So you can ask them. Sometimes I think it's helpful to get some different views, different ways of explaining it. Different teachers may have different habits of ways of teaching, and also use different examples that they've come up with over time. So sometimes it's nice to have a different view. Okay, this is the subject we're looking at, and maybe look at, like a house, for instance. If you're looking at the house, maybe I can point the front of the house, maybe another teacher points the back of the house, then another teacher the roof, and so on and so forth. Then you get to know the house. Hopefully you understand that example. That's one of the silly examples I've come up with over the years. Hopefully it works. And so now we will talk about the main subject, the 5 skandhas. Skandha actually literally translated to English means pile of or heap of. But the best word that I've come up with, singular word, is aggregate, to make the aggregates, the 5 aggregates that make up the whole. So the 5 skandhas are what make up a living being, basically. Now, I'll point out straight away, though I will reiterate this later, that these skandhas represent our physicality and our mentality. They can also be broken down even more, which we won't have time to go into today, but I'll do my best to break them down a little bit. Anyway, they are constantly changing. Anicca. They are impermanent, not staying the same for even a tiny little nano moment. They are all unsatisfactory due to cause and effect, due to impermanence and the like. So dukkha, unsatisfactory, translated often as suffering. But really, I think the word unsatisfactory is better. Suffering is a big word. Whereas unsatisfactory, I think, has many different layers and levels of which suffering is part of. Also, there are anatta, or in Sanskrit, anatman. There's no self to be found in these skandhas. No permanent, unchanging self. How can there be if they are constantly changing? If they're all interdependent upon each other, how can they be independent? They're empty of independence. The word self really is just a convenient term for a makeup of many things coming together, many components coming together and changing all the time. Just like a forest is really just a convenient term that we give to lots of trees, lots of other plants all together. Just like a house, as I mentioned before, is just a convenient term for the makeup of different rooms and plumbing and all sorts of things, an abode to live in, functioning as what we call a house. Okay, so I think I'll leave those examples there because I wrote myself a few notes so I didn't forget certain parts, even though I don't normally forget, hopefully. But I thought I'd go a little bit in order. I've already gone out of order. So I'll look at those notes in a second. So really the self is just this convenient term for a group of components that are constantly changing different details and aspects. So the first skandha is our form, rupa, in both Pali and Sanskrit. It can also be known as our physicality or corporality. And this is our own body as such, but also the bodies of other living beings, as well as all of the physical things in the universe, all of the physical things around us. This is rupa, or form. I'll give you a few different words to explain each one, okay? Because English language is very, you could call it intellectual language in a sense. We have a lot of words that mean the same or similar things. And I think it's helpful for us English speakers to sort of contemplate on the meaning of these different words, okay? And then go back and check that with the original scripture, the words used in the scripture, in Pali or Sanskrit. Or the other traditions that did say, for instance, you practice in Chinese Buddhism, in the ancient Chinese, because the translation started very, very early, and other traditions too. And so that is form, that is the first one. Then the next four relate to our mentality. And they are, in this order, feelings or sensations or mental sensations, which are of three types: pleasurable, unpleasant, and neutral. Then we also have what you could say is the first thought of your personal experience, of which I'll explain that in a moment, or in a little while. Then I think the best word to use today is perception, even though perception is kind of a word that's very difficult to understand thoroughly. So it's the first thought, the noting, the recognition of our experience. So let's say, for instance, I'll give you a very silly example. You bump your head on something and ouch, it hurts a little bit. You have that feeling. You then note the ouch. And then if you apply what I call the buffer zone, so you don't create negative karma, then you actually stop yourself from reacting in a negative way with anger and so forth, which is the fourth skandha, which I'll mention in a moment. And so, but that's perception. I think it's a good word for today. Then the fourth skandha can be known as mental formations. My favorite term for it is impulsive mental reactions. This has two parts, you could say. It comes from the past, so our habits being brought into the present, and also some sort of element of volition, where we create things right now, our will, our intentions. This is where karma is created, and our reactions to things right now, which of course is conditioned from the past. Then we have the fifth skandha, which is consciousness. And of course, consciousness is made up of the eye consciousness, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind consciousness. It can also be broken up even further. Okay, so that's the five skandhas. That's the kind of intro. Now I'll look at my notes here. I've written them in big writing, so I don't have to put my reading glasses on. I'm getting older. But I can still see the screen all right. Actually, I'm not too bad. Number 1.5 is that I have the ones from the chemist. They're not prescription glasses. Anyway, so rupa, form, body, physical phenomena, subject and object, which relates to, I'm glad I looked, which relates to the five physical senses and the sense objects. They come into contact, okay? And then, of course, there's a conscious moment, which I'll mention in a moment. So the eye comes into contact. Let's say very simply, we're looking at the computer right now, and that's the object. So your seeing is the object, and what you're seeing is also the object. The subject is your ability to see. And then, of course, there's a contact between this, and then there is the conscious moment. Okay, so that's also, rupa makes up these five sense doors, the physical ones, not the mind sense yet. Then we have Vedana, the feelings, the sensations. Then we have Samjna, means it's Sanskrit, or Sanna in Pali. And this is the thought or perception. This is where we give a name and identity to our experience. We identify it with it. Recognition or noting. Then there is samskara, which, like I said, is mental impulses or habitual mental impulses or reactions. Then the past, you can call the past mental reactions that we brought in and conditions this moment now as mental formations. And then how we react to this right now is like a volition or intention or will. And these have three types as well. You can either react with a wholesome state of mind, an unwholesome state of mind, or a neutral state of mind. Now, of course, we should do our best to, if we're going to react, because we do have this habit right now, then we should make the great effort to keep the wholesome state of mind, so that we're going to, our actions and words that may follow are also wholesome, and try our best to avoid unwholesome and even neutral. Try to make our mind more wholesome. As we do so, it'll become more habitual for us to do this. Okay, it becomes more natural. It's like anything in life, really. And then we have Vijnana or Vinana in Pali, and this is our consciousness. Or actually, consciousness can also be known as awareness. This is like a pure awareness. Consciousness doesn't decide on things. It doesn't give a name or an identity to things. This is happening with our perceptions. Okay, but this kind of the five skandhas really is like the Buddhist analysis of the makeup of a living being. It's the analysis of a personal experience, or even you could say our personality. It also has, as mentioned a few times, the element of experience. I've mentioned there's no self to be found, or in the components or in the whole. The self, like I said, is just a convenient term for a collection of physical and mental factors. The ocean is another example you can give. We give this name, the ocean. We live here at Phillip Island, and if I was at the front of the house, we'd be looking at the ocean. But really, how many droplets of water in the ocean? And they're constantly changing. And the tides coming in, going out, constant change. Okay, it's really, I think some of these things, it's really important to contemplate them as well, not just ourself, so that we can break through this attachment to self and the self of other things too, and other living beings. So our form, I think I've mentioned most of this. Our body, other living beings, it's material objects, it's the earth, the water, the wind, the fire, the space, the five physical senses and the corresponding objects, and of which, of course, they are five as well. The earth, water, wind, fire, and space that I mentioned are the elements that make up physicality. Normally we say four of them, but actually we must add space as well, because space, without space, there's no space for the other ones to be. So all of our atoms, molecules, all of the makeup of our physicality are made up of these elements. This is science, you know, this is taught by the Buddha, and also modern science caught up. As Albert Einstein said, modern science still has a long way to go, and probably will never reach the insight of Buddhism, because of the Buddhism points directly to the mind, and science, even though it can get very close, even these days, can never really perceive the mind. It can perceive maybe the possible effects of the mind on the brain, for instance, and then different causes and effects and so forth, but can't really see the mind. Only through the Buddhist meditation can you get to perceive the mind, get to turn this really limited level of consciousness we may have now into the more profound and really in-depth levels of consciousness that we can attain through the mental absorptions and the jhanas, as we can say, or dhyanas, but also eventually leading to enlightenment again. All right, then I think that's enough for that one, for form. It's not enough, the form by itself. When you have the contact between your sense or sense door and the sense object, but this is not enough to produce experience without the consciousness, and I alluded to that earlier. The consciousness is an indispensable element in the production of experience. I think that should be obvious without me going into detail. Just mentioning here the 12 ayutanas, and you can look into this yourself if you like. The 12 ayutanas are the 6 senses, when you include the mind sense with the physical senses and the sense objects. That's 12 ayutanas, and then you have the 18 dhatus, when you have these 12, and then you add the 6 consciousnesses. So the 18 dhatus are always in play in our experience. The contact is from the sense door to the object. This, once again, results, this is all happening at the same time, results in this conscious moment or awareness moment. This is not yet personal experience. The personal experience comes from the other three skandhas. So, for instance, the feeling, the perception, and the impulsive mental reactions. Okay, I'll just mention briefly here, before I go on any further, we won't be able to go too much detail on the mind, the consciousness, especially that aspect, but the objects, like for instance, the sixth sense, the mind sense, the objects of the mind sense are things like the thoughts, ideas, concepts, properties, belief, mental imagery, kind of like a mental chatter, and also some sort of mental feelings. You know, this is the objects of the mind. Okay, so when you I mentioned before the 12 ayatanas and the 18 dhatus, when you put have the conscious moments there, that is related to the mind one. I wanted to mention that because I didn't cover that earlier. There you go. That's number 1 page done. So personal experience is produced through the functioning of feeling, perception, and impulsive mental reactions. These three function to turn awareness or consciousness or the conscious experience of an object into personal experience. So feeling is kind of has an emotional dimension. It's not fully blown emotions yet. I know quite often as human beings, we tend to say, oh, I have feelings. I have emotional feelings. But actually, it's not really fully blown emotions yet, because this starts to come with the other two, okay? But it's just that feeling that you get. It's either pleasurable, unpleasant, or neutral. When the object is experienced, okay, it gives rise to these three, one of these three, all the time. Like I said, you bump your head, normally it would be painful or unpleasant. Somebody gives you a nice massage at the end of a long day, and maybe this is pleasurable. And so many of our other actions, because they are just habitual tendencies and so forth, maybe they're just neutral. You know, you can get up in the morning, you know, to give you a silly example, and clean your teeth, and it can be pleasurable, or it can be a pain in the butt and be unpleasant. Maybe you have sore gums, but most of the time we would do this just because it's a habit to do so. Okay, so maybe you should, that's a good point to make, even though I'm jumping to the 4th skandha. When you clean your teeth in the morning, make it wholesome. Okay, make it a wholesome teeth cleaning session. And avoid it thinking, oh, I have to do this again, it's painful. And avoid just being like that, okay? Even in these tiny little actions that we do all the time, if we can maintain a wholesome state of mind, then we will continue to reinforce this good habit. And as we engage in this wholesome state of mind, or as we keep this wholesome state of mind, I should say, then we won't have unwholesome states of mind, because the wholesome state of mind is obviously the antidote for unwholesome. Then next, I've forgotten my spot now. Okay, perception, difficult to understand. It's the activity of recognition and identification. We attach a name, a labeling, or identity to the object of our experience. The function of perception is to turn an indefinite experience into an identified and recognized experience, a formulation of a concept or a conception of an idea about a particular object, conceptual element, and the intro to making things definitive. And then, of course, we have the 4th skandha, is impulsive mental reactions. As mentioned, mental formation comes from the past. We bring it into the present, conditions the present, and then from the present, we create the karma with our volition and intention, normally through a conditioned response. Our habits, habitual impulses, reactions. The past impression created by previous actions and habits from so many lifetimes. You know, it's very difficult to put a number on this. We can't put a number on it, because we say beginningless time, endless time, like this. So we've stored up and reinforced all of these habits over many, 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 many lifetimes, we could say, put it simply. This is not static though, okay? It's very dynamic, the process, just as cause and effect is dynamic, it's not static. Now, some people have said, oh, if I do this in this lifetime, next lifetime, will I be a dog? No, you can't. It's not static like that. You can't think, oh, I killed a dog, so I'll be a dog. I read that somewhere, and it was actually another religion trying to put Buddhism down. And I used to visit for about 7.5 years. I used to visit a prison in the country Victoria as the Buddhist chaplain. And sometimes the other religions, they put in the library, they put their magazines. And I did too. I brought books in and stuff. Anyway, there was this monthly magazine, and if there were lockdowns, of course we know that word a lot these days, but if there were lockdowns in the prison, if something had gone wrong, somebody done something wrong, and then I had time by myself. And so I would read different things just for information to learn. And I read this thing one time, and it said this minister or something, he said, oh, my brother or uncle is a Buddhist, and he believes that if you kill a dog in this life, you'll be born as a dog in the next life. And so I shared this story with students at the weekend classes. And I said, actually, if you think about that, then maybe kill a king in this life, if it's like that. So that you'd be reborn as a king. It's cause and effect is not like that. It's constantly happening all the time. We're actually planting karmic imprints on our consciousness every moment, even more than every moment. And so best to do the wholesome again. All right. So don't kill kings. Okay. Don't kill dogs. Don't kill anything. All right. Don't kill yourself. Don't harm yourself. Don't harm any living being. Do your very best to be gentle and kind, obviously. So anyway, dynamic is fluid. It has a moral dimension and consequences, as I mentioned, wholesome, unwholesome, and neutral. How physical and mental factors work together to produce personal experience. I'll give you an example of going for a walk in your garden or in a park if you live in an apartment or a flat. And you can go for a walk in the garden. Let's say, for instance, you're using your eyes to have a look around. Maybe you're smelling the flowers or something, and then you have the experience. Maybe you're allergic to the flowers. It gives rise to unpleasant feeling, and then you perceive this as not good. Maybe you even run away and go back inside. Or you can mentally react in a negative way, possibly. Or you love the smell of the flowers, or you're not attached to the fact you're sneezing. Then actually you can have a pleasant time, and this can give rise to this pleasant feeling. And then normally the reaction to that, unfortunately, because we are not enlightened yet, will be attachment, unless we check our mind and then give ourselves the opportunity, like I said, to a buffer zone, to not react, and just perceive this as it is, clearly as it is, rather than putting our own conditioned twist onto things. All right, so putting our filter onto things. The eyes make contact with the object. The attention focuses on the object, consciously aware, and the perception identifies the object. And then it gives rise to these 3 types of feelings, one of them. But also, the important to note here, then gives rise to hope and fear. One of the reasons that we are talking about these 5 skandhas and so many of the other Dharma teachings to realize the impermanence, realize the no self, for instance, is that so that we can free ourselves from hope and fear, hoping to have certain things that we find pleasing, fearing having things that we find unpleasant. We have so many hopes, so many fears, and these hopes and fears blow us off our Dharma path. We have hopes and fears related to what we call the 8 worldly winds, which also can be known as the 8 worldly concerns, or the 4 pairs. And this, we're always wanting pleasure, wanting to avoid pain. We're always wanting to be famous and not shamed. We're also wanting to be praised and not blamed. We're also wanting to gain, not lose. And it could even be applied the vice versa. For instance, you don't want to gain COVID, for instance. Maybe that's too early for that because it's still in the pandemic. I shouldn't make jokes about that one. But you don't want it for sure. You don't want to get sick, for instance. So you don't want to gain that. It can be applied the opposite. And I think most of you will probably know about these 8 worldly winds. And then we will react to the object with either attachment or aversion. We either want to pick it up or we want to push it away. That's that page. And I'll give you some more examples. I mentioned before, you're looking at this screen right now. You're participating in a Dharma class. It just so happens this time, it may be different next time, but I'm the teacher and you're looking at me giving the teachings, and you're engaging all of your senses actually, but obviously your mind sense is very much involved, but also your eyes and your ears. You're hearing the sounds, you're hearing the words, then contemplating them maybe, and then even though you should just listen now, contemplate them later. And then also you're using your eyes, you're seeing the screen. You're seeing if I'm smiling, you're seeing if I fall asleep, you're seeing if I look angry or something. So you're engaging the eyes, the ears, so you're engaging initially the first skanda of the body and also the conscious, the contact between your ability to see or hear, and then the actual object, so the sound and the vision. And so then you have a conscious moment of that. Then, of course, you perceive it, you identify it. Oh, this is Dharma talk. And then you can give rise then to some feelings, either pleasurable, unpleasant, or neutral, or maybe boredom. Maybe you have fallen asleep already, or anything like that, okay? So the feeling, the impulse then responds with the conditioned reaction of either paying attention, interest, boredom, or even irritation. So when you listen to these teachings, the 5 skandhas, this analysis of the 5 skandhas, form or physicality, and then the 4 that relate to mentality, the feelings, the perception, the mental formation, and the consciousness. Once again, I'll remind you, you need to investigate. We have what we call in Buddhism the 3 wisdom tools, sometimes only known as the 3 wisdoms. The first one is the wisdom of hearing, which can also include studying, reading. And then we have the wisdom of contemplation, or you could call reflection, where we use our ability to contemplate, to investigate, to analyze what it is we heard or what it is that we read. Then we have the wisdom of meditation, or you could say mental absorption, where now we absorb our mind with what it is we learned. After thoroughly testing it, just like a goldsmith tests for real gold, really get to know it and then really absorb your mind with it. So when you put these 3 wisdom tools into practice, then you will become more wise. The wisdom of hearing, already you will become more wise. Then engage the wisdom of contemplation, become more wise. And then, of course, when we have become a lot more wise at this moment, this time, then we stop everything and meditate to absorb the mind on this, and then take it out into your everyday practice, everyday life, and in your sort of dealing with your own mind, but also reacting or not reacting in your relationships with others and the world at large. And also another thing to mention here, I mentioned earlier, all phenomena, and this is included in the song, that all phenomena are impermanent, constantly changing, dependent on conditions, cause and effect. They are unsatisfactory and they are empty of independent, unchanging self. Anything like the body, think about our body now. I think, do you have pictures of yourself from when you were younger? I worked in the entertainment industry. There's lots of pictures of me in my 20s and 30s. I look very different. Of course, I still have hair, but not as thick as those days, because I don't get rid of the hair these days. But I look very different. My forehead's a lot bigger than. And do you have these moments? This is kind of funny, okay? This is not to get down on ourselves, okay? But if we every now and then in the past, not so much recently, but I'd walk past a window somewhere, and I see a reflection in the window of this older guy, and I think, oh, that's what I look like now. Wow, okay, fair enough. And so yes, you can see, just contemplate your body, and this by contemplating this impermanence, then you can also contemplate this precious human life, to practice the Dharma now. You know, this not only can help us to not have attachment to self and so forth, but also practice the Dharma now. Really put a lot of effort into it. Don't try too hard, don't try too little. Not too tired, not too loose. A middle way for yourself, what suits you, and then improve this over time. And so then you can also contemplate the precious human life, contemplate that it is impermanent, that everything is impermanent. Contemplate the law of karma, then cause and effect. Try to maintain a wholesome state of mind. And then also contemplate the unsatisfactory nature of cyclic existence. That even when we have some form of happiness, even if it lasts a long time, it doesn't last. It has the nature of change. Okay, so these are known, what I just mentioned to you, as the 4 preliminary contemplations, to be able to turn your mind to the Dharma path and experience, or realize, I should say, true renunciation. So often people think that renunciates really are only monks and nuns ordained, but actually no. True renunciation means turning your mind to enlightenment, to practicing the Dharma. Doesn't mean that you don't do some of the other hobbies that you have, some of the other interests, but while you're doing them, including your work and studies, then you actually apply the Dharma all the time as you're doing them, as you're engaging in other activities. Okay, so these contemplating these 4 I just mentioned, precious human birth, impermanence, law of karma, and unsatisfactory nature of samsara, that will help you to turn your mind to the Dharma wholeheartedly and practice undaunted. And so then you can develop, as I mentioned, straight up the bodhicitta, great compassionate intention to realize enlightenment for the benefit of others, and help them to do likewise, as well as realizing the supreme wisdom. The way we are right now, do you remember the parable that the Buddha gave about a rope that was curled up in the corner? There was a man who was very scared of snakes, and he walked into a dimly lit room, and I'm going to really paraphrase this now, I'll just give you the punchline. And then he looked there and he thought it was a snake, because it was like curled up like a python or something. And then as his eyes, he calmed himself. In the beginning, he was just about had a heart attack, but then he calmed himself and his eyes adjusted. And then it's just a rope. We do this, we give rise to hope and fear so often based on a lack of understanding what something really is, whether it's to do with ourselves, whether it's to do with others, whether it's to do with our mind, whether it's to do with our body or other physical things, okay? So we need to train ourselves. We need to purify the mind. I'll give you a teaching that I come up with many years ago, and it's really just an embellishment on other teachers and my teachers, and that is a pane of glass, okay? Now, or a window. Sometimes you can look after some heavy winds and rain and whatever. You look at the window and you think, oh, the window is so dirty. I have to clean the window. But actually the window is not dirty. The window is just a window. But the dirt is on the window, so you must clean it. It's not dirty or clean. It's just window. And this is likewise with enlightened mind. The dirt or our defilements and mental afflictions are not attached to the so-called mind. I'll just use the word mind for convenience now, okay? It's not also not the opposite of clean. It's beyond that. So we must clean the window right now because it's dirty. We must practice the Dharma right now because we have created all of these habits, this conditioning over so many lifetimes. Sometimes it'll be easy to clean the window. Other times more difficult. Just like, regular dust is easy to clean off the window. And other times you have to use things like vinegar and whatnot to get rid of that really grimy stuff. And other times you may have to work even harder at cleaning the window, just as we do with purifying as we go further into the mind, into the subtle aspects of the mental afflictions, to purify them as well. Okay, so your mind is already pure. Isn't that great? If it wasn't, how could you purify it? If the dirt was part of the window, how could the window ever be clear? How could your mind, how could you reach enlightenment if your mental afflictions were part of your mind? You can start to realize that even though we have these mental afflictions, and some of them even really intense right now, we can free our mind from them, because our mind is already free from them. Okay? Enlightenment is nothing that you go and get. It's unveiling. And another quote I'll steal from myself again, there is enlightenment, but no enlightenment is there. And maybe a good way to explain that one just with body language is there is enlightenment, but no enlightenment is there. Just like the horizon. You may be standing, let's say, on a long beach, and you're looking that way, and you see the horizon. You want to go to the horizon. So then you make your way to the horizon, and where you think the horizon was, now maybe you look back and now the horizon is where you were. There's no horizon. So there's no enlightenment out there. Enlightenment, purify your mind, and you can realize it. It's already enlightenment. Enlightenment is there. But no enlightenment is there. Okay, so I leave you with that one. And then a couple of other things. We can alter our habits. I alluded to this a bit earlier. In other words, making the effort to maintain a wholesome state of mind. We can actually change our habits for the better. Maybe we're doing it right now by engaging in listening to the Dharma, then contemplating the Dharma, and then absorbing our mind with the Dharma. We're changing already right now for the better. But also we can change for the worse. I'll paraphrase something the Buddha said. Okay, I can't remember the sutra, but something like you must keep moving forward on the Dharma path, because if you stay still, you're going backwards. That's my own embellishment on it. But in other words, you must continue practicing, okay? Continuing improving without stress, but still continue to improve with like enthusiasm, with joy, non-attached joy. And because if you stand still, just like if a rock stays still, then dust will form on it. Or that window, the dust will form as it's not moving around, as it's not being cleaned. Okay, so that's why the Buddha said those words. So if we think, I'll just have a day off Dharma practice, don't do it, because the old habits are going to get reinforced. Okay, that doesn't mean you don't take a day off, but still practice, still look after your mind. Remember, the Dharma teachings can be put into, don't do anything bad, do only good, purify your mind. Even if that's all you think about during one day, you can watch TV, no problem. You can go for a drive, no problem. You can go for a run, no problem. Don't engage in any harmful actions, obviously. But also keep that in your mind. If you start to get a little lazy mentally, just brighten your mind. As you do that, it becomes more natural to do so. Just like when we do breath meditation, if your mind starts to get sleepy and dull, then you focus on the object, on the breath more brightly. And it's the same with everything, all of our experiences. We can do this. The more bright the mind is, the more we experience clearly. For instance, going into your garden, you can experience all of the flowers. You can experience the beauty in that moment and realize the impermanence. Realize that everything's changing all the time, that everything is interconnected, just like all living beings are interconnected. And if we're all interconnected, how can we be anything but compassionate and loving? Based on wisdom, based on a mind of equanimity. And the other things I'd like to mention is the two truths. We have what we call the relative truth, and then we have the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth, obviously, is the truth of enlightenment, and this is unconditioned. The relative truth is conditioned by cause and effect. And then, of course, we can break this up even more, taken from the Lotus Sutra and the three natures, where you have the ultimate nature, which is the ultimate truth, obviously, and then you could say that what we call relative truth is broken up into two natures. The first one is the imputed nature, where we impute some sort of sound or word and concept onto everything, onto ourselves, onto inanimate objects and everything, okay? And then we have what we call the relational nature. And this is the makeup of how things are all interconnected. Okay, so there's three natures. I'm giving you a few of these teachings, like three natures, three wisdom tools, for you to be able to take this away. Some of the teachings I'm giving today are definitive. Some of them are interpretable. And, you could say some for you to mentally chew on in your own time. And then come back with questions to myself or to others as well. Contemplate yourself. And so the three natures are very deep teaching, and I'll leave it there. Then, of course, I mentioned before these processes, including our Dharma practice and the law of karma and the like. They are processes, they are not things. They are dynamic and not static. So the purpose of this analysis is to realize the wisdom of emptiness or non-self, to experience without an idea of self or attachment to self. In other words, we're freeing ourselves from the shackles of this narrow view, this myopic view of self. So we're freeing ourselves to experience in terms of processes, impersonal functions, and not restricted by this so-called self. Create an attitude of equanimity, a non-biased mind, where we now are starting to free our mind from even the subtle aspects of attachment and aversion, having the right intention eventually to go and have the right understanding, the wisdom, the real wisdom, which uproots ignorance. What I just mentioned there are called the three poisons, aren't they? Ignorance, from ignorance arises attachment and aversion. Attachment to what we find pleasing, aversion from what we find unpleasant. They are known altogether as the three poisons because they are the three poisonous states of mind coming, like I said, from the ignorance, from the lack of knowing, from avidya, or lack of wisdom, lack of knowing. Then they arise, and then they give rise to all of the other mental afflictions. Initially to another three that then we can call the Six Root Delusions, which is arrogant pride, doubts, including self-doubts and doubting the Dharma, things like this, and also having the wrong view of reality, the wrong views. For instance, like saying the law of karma doesn't exist, or the Buddha's not a Buddha, or things like that. Very simple examples. Also, we will create this attitude of equanimity, which is essential to develop true compassion and true love and kindness. In other words, bodhicitta. Okay, by practicing the four immeasurables, developing these four immeasurables, or Brahma Vihara, which translated means sublime mental abodes. Also, we can overcome the hope and fear, like I mentioned, overcome the 8 winds I mentioned earlier. So you can rewind the video if you're looking at it again to that part. And we tend to personalize this, then we get what we don't want, we get upset, we get what we do want, we get attached, that type of thing. So giving up the hope, freeing ourselves from the hope and the fear. the buffer zone I mentioned to you. And so this, I'll reiterate very briefly. You hit your head on a cupboard or something. I've done that a lot in my life because I'm quite tall and lived in many different places and sometimes not familiar with the cupboard size or height. Anyway, you know, normally bang the head, ouch. And then you perceive it as ouch. It gives rise to some bad feeling. And then so often we would impulsively react with something like anger and whatever. But if you can, between your feeling or the perception and then the feeling, the personal experience, before impulsively mentally reacting, you can create a bit of a gap and check your mind. And then you will avoid creating the negative karma and increasing and reinforcing the habit of reacting in a negative way. That's how you nip negativity in the bud, okay, to put it another way. Don't mind so much or take things so personally. They're always changing anyway. Or don't be upset with yourself or others. Try to give up the habit of doing this. This is just habitual tendencies. And so now I think that will do. And maybe if you guys have some questions, then you can ask the questions. So you can open up the mics. And then after we have questions and answers, then I will do that other song I mentioned, I promised you, and then the dedication prayer. If there's not any questions, or if there's only a few questions and I answer them quickly, then I'll continue onwards, okay, with the talk. But that's my big writing in 3 foolscap pages done for the day. I'm glad I wrote them so I didn't forget. There was a few points that I may have forgotten. Hopefully I didn't give you too much information, because it's something that we also can do as teachers, isn't it? You know, hopefully I give you just enough for you to know, to get to know even more, like reinforce your knowledge if you know it already, to check your knowledge, and also for you to mentally chew on. Maybe if you take anything out of this, if there's only one thing, don't take things so personally. You're changing, and you can change for the better. Okay?
I had a question, Master Andrew Williams.
Yes.
I actually had several. The first thing is like the wisdom aspect. It talks about the 3 wisdoms. There's contemplation, listening, and absorption. Do wisdom develop through all 3 separately, or is there a process that follows from the top to bottom, like through listening to contemplation to absorption?
Yes, it happens. It is a process. We can practice them almost. We should do them one at a time, and then all together eventually. But it's a process. Like, for instance, I don't know if you've heard this teaching before about the 3 wisdom tools, but maybe this is the first time. Well, let's say it is the first time that you've heard it, and you got this knowledge by hearing. So you engaged your wisdom tool of hearing. You know, I must add here, as much as possible, we should hear without bias. You know, the Buddha gave examples. He said that we should listen to the Dharma like a pot, the right way up. Not a pot the wrong way up, where we're there physically, but we're not paying attention or whatever. Not a pot with holes, because we won't retain very much at all, if anything. And definitely not a pot with yesterday's curdled milk. Now, what that means is having our own opinions and views. And even then, the pure Dharma becomes curdled. So because when you pour pure milk into, or even say water or something like that, into curdled milk or off putrid water, then the pure water also becomes putrid, or the pure milk becomes curdled. And so we should try to do this as much as possible with pure intentions. That's what the Buddha means like that. Really pay attention. And therefore you will, and the more you do that, the more it'll become a habit to do that. The more you'll be able to concentrate for longer periods and hear the Dharma talk. Let's say, for instance, it's an hour or hour and a half, or even a 5-minute talk, you'll be able to pay attention for longer periods by improving that wisdom of hearing. And then you can contemplate. This is why it's very important to develop one-pointed concentration as much as possible, so that we can, through practice of meditation, formal sitting meditation, and even walking meditation and so forth. So you can focus then on what it is you heard for longer periods of time, and engage your interest, your abilities to investigate and analyze, and get to know what it is that you heard. And then you can utilize meditation techniques to absorb the mind with what it is you learned. Okay, so with many different types of meditations, you can say that there's some meditations are there. Metta meditation, for instance, is to develop love and kindness. In Tibetan tradition, they have the giving-taking meditation, where you give all of your goodness, everything, all of your merits and everything to other living beings, and then you take all of their suffering upon yourself. And this is to give up self-centeredness, but also to develop compassion. There are, breath meditation, or any object or any meditation where you're focusing on a particular object. Then this is obviously to develop one-pointed concentration, or samadhi. Okay, and the more we're able to do that, the more we can then contemplate for longer periods on an object, and then you can absorb your mind with it. Okay, work to absorb your mind with it. In the beginning, it may only be for a few seconds. Then you start to do it more and more, and then it starts to become natural and part of your life. Okay, so yes, it is a process, but to get to know it right now, know it as the 3 wisdoms, or the 3 wisdom tools, and then know it separately. Wisdom of hearing, wisdom of contemplation, wisdom of meditation, and then put it into practice. You can ask the other questions too, no problem.
Oh, yeah, that's really helpful. I think I definitely need to research a bit more about absorption, because I don't.
Me too. We're all not enlightened, So yeah, don't be hard on yourself. Like I said, not too tired, not too loose. Practice at your own speed. Do it joyfully, enthusiastically. Make it part of your life, and even as you engage in all of the other activities you may engage in.
Yeah, that's really linked to my second question. Is you talked a little bit about kind of practicing the Dharma every day, kind of incorporating that in like every part of your life, working or doing other things. Just would love to hear your perspective on like how to kind of incorporate it in our everyday life. So, for example, you mentioned the example of bumping your head and being really aware of it. There are kind of times in the day where I'm mindful enough to notice it. So firstly, there's different periods of time when I'm mindful enough to notice it. Second, I think there's different levels of triggers, or like the different levels, how deep something is, like how deep the grease is on the window. Yeah, but I'm just really curious to hear your tips on how to practice it every day.
Yeah, well, the first thing is to check your intention. It's like look in your mind often. Sometimes you have to really focus on something else, whether it's your studies or your work or other activities, and you really focus on that at that time. But while you're doing it, try to keep your mind upright, flexible, humble. I like to say, just like a big oak tree, the wood from the oak tree is often used to make furniture, and in fact, even this guitar here is made from oak. So you can sort of mold it into different shapes, so it's flexible. And also, when the winds blow, the tree will, flexible. It's not rigid, so it doesn't break. But also, it's very humble. That you don't see trees going out and saying, "Hey, I'm a tree. I'm a big tree." Like us humans do that. So actually, very humble and flexible, and kind of patience. It's important for us to be patient with ourselves. Patient, even if we're going through difficulties. Even if we don't know all of the Dharma teachings yet, You know, we don't know the nature of reality yet. Be patient with that. And then continue doing these other activities and be patient. Like, first of all, the first one, this is the 6 parameters, okay, which is the current subject that we just finished the Zoom classes for the last maybe, I think, 7 or 8 months. And the first one is generosity. You know, this is known as the door to the Dharma. You need to, or we all need to be generous. Generosity is also the antidote for attachment and selfishness. You know, give material aid if we can to those who need it. We can give protection from fear. Like many people have, like I said, hopes and fears. You can help them alleviate those fears. And also give the Dharma, whatever it is that you understand of the Dharma, or even if it's through your spirit, you know, it's from practicing well and you're radiating the Dharma, even silently. And so this is important. Then, of course, be moral, like I mentioned, wholesome state of mind, give up unwholesome states of mind, and also work to benefit others. As you benefit others, you also benefit yourself, and vice versa. Be patient. I mentioned them already. Make the effort, like continue to have a wholesome state of mind. Continue to also have a good sense of humor, because we are quite funny, us living beings. Like I said, we can walk into a dim room and think there's a snake, but actually it's just a rope. We can laugh at that. We can laugh at our imperfections. It's fine. I used to say to people years ago, I'm the funniest person I know. Now, but then I realized some people thought I was full of myself, so I'd stopped saying it. What I mean by that is, you know, even though I don't know myself yet, we only know ourselves eventually when we attain what we call enlightenment, right? Or at least higher levels. Anyway, but relatively, I'm the only person that I really do know. I can't see inside other people's minds. That's what I was trying to say by that. But I stopped saying it because I just noticed some people thought, yeah, he's full of it. So anyway, but you can laugh at ourselves. Don't be shy to do that. And then once again, make the effort to benefit yourself and others. And then you can practice meditation formally as well as informally, or what I like to say, on the cushion and off the cushion. And then you can develop more wisdom. There's the 6 parameters put into practice all at the same time. Of course, the first 5 only become parameters or beyond perfections when the wisdom is attained. Okay, so just in everyday life, like I said, use the example of cleaning your teeth, the toothpaste, toothbrush. Very simple little actions. Do it with a sense of humor and be consistent at it. Really, the Dharma it's not something to make us feel bad. You know, yes, we need to recognize our faults so that we can decrease them, eventually eradicate them. But also we need to know our good qualities so that we can protect them, increase them, nurture them, perfect them. You know, so we do need to look in the mind like that. But don't be down on yourself when you're looking at your faults. That's fantastic to look at your faults. How else can you eradicate them or work towards eradicating them? If there was a fire behind you right now and you didn't know it was there, how can you put the fire out? You will get burnt. But if you know the fire's there, then you can take the action to put the fire out. So this is like looking in the mind at our faults. It's a positive thing when we perceive our faults. But don't get down on yourself, very important. I think that'll do. Tell me if I didn't answer your question, or if I went down the branches of the tree and didn't stay with the root.
That was very helpful. Thank you very much.
Very good. Other questions?
I had another question. I'm sorry, since no one's asking.
Never be sorry for asking questions. There is never a dumb question, ever.
It's popped up when you were talking about brightening of the mind. And I really like what you said about how it's very similar to brightening when you're breathing and things like that. I would love to just hear a bit more about what you mean by brightening the mind and the techniques we can use to brighten our mind.
Yeah, it just relates a little bit to what I just mentioned, of checking the mind. The mind becomes dull and cloudy when we are really thickening our engagement with ignorance, lack of knowing, attachment, aversion. When we are greedy, when we are worried, once again, those two words, hope and the fear, when the mind is clouded with these, then it's very dull, very murky. But if you practice what I mentioned before, the generosity, the mind becomes very light, giving. I'm not talking about now just giving stuff. The best generosity you can give is practicing the Dharma and then sharing that with others. That's the greatest offering that you can offer to the Buddha and to the Dharma and to the Sangha, is to actually put the teachings into practice. And so you can give of yourself, give of your kindness, give a good vibe. Years ago, not long after I first started teaching, I had a student. She was 18, Vietnamese American background. I was living in the Vietnamese temple in California, and she was a uni student. In fact, a lot of the people in this class were uni students or young adults, and she worked also in a supermarket. Oh, by the way, I'll jump ahead many years, and she's, I think, still a nun these days. So she became a nun after that period. Anyway, she wanted me to teach from the Diamond Sutra, which the full name in Sanskrit is the Mahaprajna Paramita Vajrachittika Sutra, which translated literally means the great perfection of wisdom scripture, diamond cutter scripture, known as a diamond cutter because what do you cut a diamond with? With another diamond. It's the hardest known substance that we know about in this world and beyond. So this diamond, in this sense, represents wisdom. You can only perceive the wisdom when you realize the wisdom. And it sounds like a riddle, but it's the truth. You only perceive the nature of everything when you realize the supreme wisdom. And so, anyway, so I digress slightly. So part of being able to get this wisdom, you have to go through the stages of practicing generosity, morality, patience, effort, concentration, okay? The other 5 of the 6 paramitas on the bodhisattva path now, okay, to what we call full enlightenment. And the door to the Dharma, the door to this practice is generosity. So she asked me to teach from the Diamond Sutra, and of course I was being taught the Diamond Sutra by my masters at that very time. And did I get it all? No. Did I think I got it all? Kinda. But a little while later, I proved that I didn't, because I got it better. My mind became clearer. Okay. So then I asked my master whether I should do as the student requests, because as a teacher, you have to at least, you must give the teachings if you can, or at very least think about giving them. He said, I'm teaching you about Diamond Sutra. If you want to teach your students about Diamond Sutra, you teach it to me instead. Do you get the riddle? Typical brilliant Zen master. In other words, if you think you know it better than him, then I can teach it. In other words, don't teach it. He said, but the request came, so you should teach something from that. And so what I decided to do was to teach generosity without attachment. And so I won't digress any further, but I gave the students, some of you know this story, but I gave the students from that class homework. I said, go out this week and do your best to practice generosity without attachment. And then I pointed to the young lady and I said, yeah, you can do it easily, because not only are you in uni, you're also working in a supermarket. And so you come into contact with lots of people. Anyway, they all went away, and they come back with some really good examples. I asked them, the whole class the following week was about what they did, and then me saying to them, but you have attachment, basically. So she said, I was nice to everybody. I gave everything. I gave as much of myself as I could. Some of them actually were really rude to me. And then I said, did you get upset from that? She said, yes, disheartened. I said, that's with attachment. You're expecting something from your generosity. So even when we are nice and kind to people, we shouldn't expect them to be kind back. That way it becomes a bonus. Like I said before, you know, don't mind so much. Let's not take things so personally. That's one of the great simple teachings that we can get from today's class, from the commentary on the 5 skandhas. So that's how to brighten the mind. You know, practice these things. Generosity. With more generosity, the more the mind is generous, the more open it is, the more bright it is, the less clouded it is, the less closed, the less greedy and selfish, less attached. The more moral we are, the less we feel guilty about anything, because we didn't do anything wrong. You know, there's this idea of guilt. We don't really have this concept in Buddhism. It's more of a, you have some sort of clean regret, or you could use and have what we can call non-attached regret, where we regret doing negative things and then we resolve to try our best not to do them again, you know, and purify these states of mind. Mind becomes very bright like this. Maintaining a wholesome state of mind, mind becomes very bright. Patience as well, you know, and make the effort to do that. The more we develop this concentration, the more the mind is really bright. You know? This dullness that I was talking about before is, it's kind of like the opposite of the distracted and agitated mind. You know, where mind is like a pendulum, you know, like an old school clock. Tick, 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 tick. We want it to be like that. Actually, we wanted to go beyond that, but we wanted to be middle path, really focused, bright, but not rigid, you know. So often we have too many thoughts, agitation, so often dullness. Quite often, the more I've noticed in classes, the more, over the many years now, the more that the person is really distracted person, or maybe they've just become new to Buddhism or meditation, the more that they have this really distracted mind, the quicker they fell asleep in meditation sessions. Because the mind's going like that, you know, so active, underactive, you know. So I think that will do for answer for that question. See if there's some more questions. It's now 8:30. I'm now on overtime. The classes are free, so I'm getting 0 overtime. I'm teasing, by the way. I don't want anything. What I get is the pleasure of teaching you the Dharma, and your joy, your enthusiasm. I can see nice faces. I can also hear the good questions, you know. So that's what I get. Anyway, more questions? Silence. Remember, you want answers. If you have queries, doubts, uncertainties in your mind right now, you want answers, even if you don't agree with them or don't understand them even. Ask questions. Don't leave it until we've turned off our computers. Okay, so you can look at the video when it gets posted, I think, on your website. Is that right, Tina?
It'll be on YouTube.
On YouTube, okay, cool. And then you'll let people know, obviously. And then I'll also, once you've sent it to me, I'll post it on Facebook as well.
Great.
And I've also got a YouTube channel too, so I'll put it on there as well.
Excellent.
And so we can get it out there, get the Dharma out there. The more that we do, the more that we spread the Dharma, the more opportunities more living beings have of being confronted with the Dharma, or not confronted, but have the opportunity to practice. You know, whether they want to be a Buddhist or not, doesn't matter. The Dharma is there for the benefit. I like to say that it's the Dharma is inclusive, not exclusive. You know, it includes the benefiting those living beings, maybe bad behavior even. It can help them to stop behaving in a bad way. Just sometimes even just with a little bit of a nice word here and there. All right. So you can revisit the class and of course other classes from Metta Centre. And also you can have a look at my classes. It goes all the way back. We started recording them on or better recordings In the beginning, it was really very ordinary, technical problems everywhere. But I think from the 1st of August, 2020, and there's a definite order in the teachings. So if you want to go and look at those ones on the YouTube channel, then you can go back to that date. There are also other videos as well where I've been a guest lecturer for a university that I teach at sometimes in India, and some other groups as well, the Buddhist groups and conference groups and whatnot. So I've actually given a lot of, maybe, I don't know, a dozen in the last year or so. Some of those videos still need to be edited, and the person editing them has been a little bit busy in recent times. So that's it. So guitar time, sleeves time. And so this is called, it's the shorter version. Okay, I'm not doing the first long verse or the last long verse. I'll do the middle section it's the Metta Sutta. So it's actually the Buddhist discourse on loving kindness and universal loving kindness. And the song is called Universal Love, Reprise, because it's the shorter version. And just to let you know, the Metta Sutta, the first part of it is related to the practice of morality predominantly. The middle parts, which I'll be singing to you, is related to the practice of meditation, to absorb your mind predominantly. And the last part is the wisdom, so the high training in wisdom predominantly, even though they're all interrelated. So, and yes, my little fingers, my little pinky finger is sore from even playing earlier. I picked the guitar up for the first time, I think in about probably 8 months, for my mum's birthday in August, and did 2 songs for her. And then I think I picked it up again in January sometime and sung a couple of songs for my uncle and auntie in Britain and on Skype. And that was it. So not that I don't like playing guitar or singing and everything, but for me, it's teaching the Dharma. This is what I'm about. And if I can use music to do so, then I will, but it's not the be all and end all. Okay, what is music? I just shared this with you before I sing. It's just vibration and expression that are constantly changing, therefore unsatisfactory, even though we get some sort of satisfaction from it. And empty yourself. May all sentient beings be happy. May they live in safety and joy. All sentient beings, whether weak or strong, great or small, short or tall, seen or unseen, near or distant, born or to be born, may they all be happy. Let no one deceive or despise another being in any state. Let none by anger or hatred wish harm upon another. Just as a mother would protect her only child with her life, even so let one cultivate a boundless love toward all sentient beings. Let one radiate that boundless love towards the entire world, above, below, and in all directions. Without hindrance, without ill will, without enmity. May we all Be happy. So now I can do the dedication prayer before we finish up. Once again, I'll extend the invite if there are any more questions. I'm very happy to speak for another few minutes or however long it takes to answer. No? Okay.
It's just very difficult to ask you questions about my husband, so I'll be
Put him in Messenger.
yeah. Well, maybe I just tell you. I don't know whether he's listening in or something. I just don't know, and I just say anything anyway. He just got this problem. He doesn't know where to cut off. So just now, I'm listening to you, and then he comes in. It's 9:30. The time is up. Can you speak to me now? So I showed him the thing.
He wants your attention.
Constantly. It's very difficult. But anyway,
Yeah, I'm sure.
that.
But try to look at it around, okay? If Tim is listening, then I'm very, I hope you have a good day, Tim, and everything. But if he wants your attention, look at the good reason behind that as well. Even if you find it difficult because you wanted to take part in the class more, even when you do teaching, Annika is a music teacher, so when you're teaching piano and so forth, there may be some interruptions that you want to concentrate on other things, reading the Dharma books that you've been buying, and so forth. It could get irritating, but look on the other side as well to balance it out and realize you are kind of the rock in that sense, you wants your attention. You are, as from my experience with you, getting to know you, even though it's over the internet. We haven't met in person yet, but we've known each other for a year and 8 months or something like that. Yeah. And you're a wonderful person. So I don't blame him for wanting your attention. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Anything else?
No.
If you want some more detail, then you can message me as you do. So Annika asks a lot of Dharma questions, as does Ahmed as well, with a messenger. And if you want to do it through another medium, I'm very happy to do it, with emails or even by telephone. I can call international for free. It's part of the deal I have for data and phone. So. If there's no more, I'll just do the dedication prayer.
Thank you.
Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened. I'll actually do it for us collectively. So I say we instead of I. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the enlightened state of the Buddha, so that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious body Chitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And may the precious spew of Shunyata, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Homage to all of the awakened ones. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Thank you.